December 5th, 1941. The biting winds howl across the snow-choked outskirts of Moscow, where frozen breath hangs like ghosts in the sub-zero air. Feldwebel Hans Becker, huddled in a shallow foxhole with his Panzer Grenadier platoon, stamps his boots against the numbing cold, fingers stiff on his Kar 98K rifle. The ground vibrates faintly, Soviet T-34 tanks rumbling closer, their sloped armor gleaming under the pale winter sun. Artillery thunders in the distance, shells bursting in white plumes of snow and earth. Becker's unit, part of the 2nd Panzer Division, had pushed to within 15 miles of the Kremlin spires, visions of victory tantalizingly close. Now counterattacks hammer them back, men collapsing from frostbite as much as bullets. You can almost feel the ice cracking underfoot, hear the desperate chatter of MG-42s as Red Army infantry swarms from the tree line. Becker's lieutenant shouts orders over the din. "Hold the line! Reinforcements are coming!" But doubt creeps in like the frost. Supplies dwindle, fuel freezes in tanks, and the vaunted Wehrmacht shivers in summer uniforms meant for a quick summer campaign. This is the turning point, the moment Hitler's grand delusion unravels. Back in the Wolf's Lair bunker in East Prussia, Adolf Hitler pores over maps stained with coffee rings, his inner circle, Keitel, Jodl, Halder standing rigid. The Führer's voice rises in fury. "The Slavs are subhuman. They will crumble." Yet intelligence reports flood in, Soviet reserves pouring from the east, factories beyond the Urals churning out tanks by the thousands. Operation Barbarossa, launched June 22nd with 3 million men, 600,000 vehicles, and unbridled arrogance, promised swift conquest. "Kick in the door," Hitler had boasted, "and the whole rotten structure will come crashing down." The plan: 3 army groups slicing into the USSR, north to Leningrad, center to Moscow, south to Ukraine and the oil fields. Initial blitzkrieg successes, millions of Red Army prisoners, vast territories seized. But cracks appear early. Logistics stretch thin over endless steppes, partisans harry supply lines, and Stalin's scorched earth policy denies the invaders sustenance. Hitler overrides generals, no retreat, no winter preparations. He diverts forces from Moscow to the south, delaying the capital's fall. Now, as Zhukov's Siberian divisions counterpunch, the Wehrmacht reels, 200,000 dead, tanks immobilized by -40 degrees. Becker fires blindly into the whiteout, a comrade beside him freezing mid-reload. This frozen hell exposes the error, invading the Soviet Union without securing the West, underestimating Russia's depth, resilience, and winter. A fatal hubris that opens a bleeding Eastern Front. But the seeds were sown years earlier in the twisted ideology that blinded a dictator to reality. How did one decision doom an empire? July 3rd, 1940. The smoke-filled map room at the Reich Chancellery in Berlin, where the air hangs heavy with cigar fumes and triumphant laughter. Adolf Hitler stands before a massive table map of Europe, his finger tracing the fallen nations, Poland, France, the Low Countries, now shaded in triumphant black. Generals Keitel, Jodl, and Halder flank him, faces flushed from recent parades. Outside, crowds chant Sieg Heil under floodlights, celebrating the fall of France. Hitler turns, eyes gleaming. Now England will sue for peace. The war is essentially won. You can almost smell the polished leather boots, hear the scrape of chairs as staff officers lean in. This is the pinnacle. The blitzkrieg has humbled Europe in months. Panzer divisions slice through defenses like knives through butter. Luftwaffe dominates the skies. Britain stands alone. Dunkirk's evacuation, a humiliation masked as miracle. Yet in this euphoria, the fatal error germinates. Franz Halder, chief of the General Staff, cautiously raises the Soviet question in private memos. Reserves depleted, logistics strained, Britain unbroken. But Hitler waves it away. The Bolshevik state is a house of cards, he declares in monologues to aides. Influenced by Mein Kampf's racial obsessions, Slavs as subhuman, Jews as Bolshevik puppet masters, he fixates eastward. Lebensraum, living space for the Aryan race, Ukraine's grain, Caucasus oil. Generals urge consolidation, invade Britain, Operation Sea Lion, secure the Mediterranean, force Churchill to terms. But Hitler demurs. Royal Air Force bleeds the Luftwaffe in the Battle of Britain, Goering's boasts shattered. U-boats harass convoys, but America stirs with Lend-Lease. Time is not on Germany's side. By spring 1941, Hitler commits. Directive 21, Operation Barbarossa. He diverts resources to the Balkans. Yugoslavia's coup angers him, delaying the eastern launch by crucial weeks. Precious summer weather lost. General von Paulus warns of Russia's vastness, but Hitler retorts, "We only have to kick in the door." Intelligence fails catastrophically. Abwehr underestimates Soviet strength. Richard Sorge in Tokyo warns Stalin of the attack, but Stalin dismisses it. Conversely, German spies miss Siberian divisions, relocated factories. Racial blindness, Untermenschen cannot produce quality weapons. Hitler overrides professionals. No deep strategic reserves, no winter gear. Campaign will end by autumn. He splits forces, economic targets over Moscow's symbolic capture. Before winter sets in, he promises troops. As panzers mass on the border, soldiers sense unease. One lieutenant writes home, "The land goes on forever. How do we conquer that?" The door is kicked, but the structure stands, reinforced by blood and snow. And when the first frosts bite in October, the reckoning begins. June 22, 1941. Dawn breaks over the Bug River frontier, where the thunder of 3 million boots and engines drowns the morning birdsong. Oberleutnant Karl Fuchs, in a Panzer III of the 7th Panzer Division, grips the turret hatch as his column surges across makeshift bridges. Smoke rises from burning Soviet border posts. Luftwaffe Stukas scream overhead, diving on startled Red Army positions. The air vibrates with victory. Prisoners stream rearward in dazed columns. Abandoned T-26 tanks litter the roadsides. You can almost taste the dust kicked up by tracks, feel the heat of the engine compartment as panzers race eastward. Initial gains are intoxicating. Army Group Center encircles hundreds of thousands at Bialystok and Minsk, Guderian's and Hoth's panzers linking up in lightning hooks. Hitler, monitoring from the Wolf's Lair, exults to aides, "We have them." Propaganda reels show endless captives, Bolshevik collapse imminent. Yet beneath the triumph, fractures appear. Supply lines stretch 300 miles already, trucks bogging in dust clouds that choke engines. Partisans emerge from forests, ambushing convoys. Soviet resistance stiffens, fanatical stands at Brest Fortress, unexpected counterattacks. Fuchs writes home, "The land is endless. These people fight like devils." Hitler intervenes constantly, overriding generals. He halts the Moscow push in August, diverting Guderian's panzers south to encircle Kiev. Another 1,000,000 prisoners, but precious time lost. Halder fumes in his diary, "The Führer scatters our strength." The window for capturing Moscow before winter narrows. By October, Operation Typhoon launches, final drive on the capital. Mud season, Rasputitsa, turns roads to quagmires, tanks sinking axle deep. Soldiers push vehicles by hand, horses requisitioned as engines fail. Frostbite claims fingers, toes. Still, they reach the suburbs, tram lines visible, spires glinting. But Stalin holds. Factories evacuated east produce relentlessly, 4,000 T-34s by year's end, superior sloped armor baffling German gunners. Zhukov masses Siberian divisions, fresh, winter-equipped, battle-hardened from Japan. Hitler forbids retreat or flexible defense, not one step back. As November snows deepen, the offensive grinds to a halt. Fuchs's division, once unstoppable, now digs in against howling blizzards. Ammunition low, bread frozen solid, greatcoats absent. The first major counteroffensive strikes December 5th, Soviets pouring from forests, Katyushas screaming. German lines buckle. For the first time, Wehrmacht retreats in disorder. Hitler sacks Brauchitz, takes personal command, no withdrawal without his order. Generals like Hoppner disobey to save armies, sacked in turn. The door didn't fall, it swung back with fury, and as 1942 dawns with frozen corpses littering the approaches to Moscow, the war of annihilation becomes a grinding slaughter. But Hitler's errors compound, declaring war on America days later, opening a second front he cannot win. How does one man's ideology doom millions? Where the crackle of a fireplace fights the winter chill seeping through the windows, President Franklin D. Roosevelt sits in his wheelchair, face grave, as aides hand him the freshly signed declaration of war against the United States, Germany and Italy joining Japan after Pearl Harbor. Smoke from his cigarette curls upward, mixing with the tension in the room. Secretary of State Cordell Hull mutters, "Hitler's made his biggest mistake." Roosevelt nods slowly, eyes hardening. He has indeed. You can almost hear the scratch of pens on paper, feel the weight of history shifting in that moment. Days earlier, Japanese carriers struck Hawaii, but Hitler's declaration, unprovoked, unnecessary, brings America fully into the European fray. No U-boat provocation justified it. Isolationist sentiment still strong. Yet the Führer, in a Reichstag speech broadcast worldwide, rants against Jewish plutocrats and Roosevelt's encirclement, pledging solidarity with Japan. In The Wolf's Lair, Hitler justifies it to aides. America is already at war with us through Lend-Lease and Atlantic convoys. Better to formalize it now while Japan ties down their Pacific fleet. Goering laughs. The Americans are soft, capitalists, mongrels. They cannot fight a two-ocean war. But cooler heads, like Admiral Rader, warn privately. U-boats cannot win against American shipyards. Resources will be diverted from Russia. The error compounds the Eastern catastrophe. As Soviet counteroffensives rage outside Moscow, Hitler opens a global conflict. Roosevelt, in his Arsenal of Democracy fireside chat, vows total aid to allies. We will crush them all. Factories gear up, Ford, GM, Chrysler converting to war production at staggering scale. By 1942, the flood begins. Liberty ships rolling off ways faster than U-boats sink them. Shermans outnumbering Panzers, B-24s darkening German skies. Lend-Lease to USSR, thousands of trucks, tanks, aircraft, sustaining Red Army when it teetered. Hitler dismisses warnings. He forbids Atlantic Wall fortifications until too late. Scatters forces to Norway, Africa, Balkans. Rommel in North Africa begs tanks diverted from Russia, denied. Instead, precious divisions guard against invasion that comes in 1944 when Germany bleeds on 3 fronts. American generals like Eisenhower and Marshall plan methodically. First Africa, then Sicily, Italy, blooding troops while Soviets grind Wehrmacht. D-Day becomes possible only because Hitler's declaration unified America, ended isolationism overnight. In Berlin bunkers, as bombs fall, Speer later admits, declaring war on America was the greatest blunder. Their industry overwhelmed us. Raeder echoes, we could have avoided direct conflict for years. The Eastern meat grinder continues, but now fueled by American steel. Hitler's ideological fury, hazing Roosevelt's Jewish cabal, delivers the industrial giant he feared most. And as 1943 brings Stalingrad's catastrophe, the noose tightens. One declaration turns a European war into Germany's doom. February 2nd, 1943. The shattered streets of Stalingrad, where the wind whips through rubble like a funeral dirge, carrying the stench of cordite, decay, and unburied dead. General Friedrich Paulus, newly promoted field marshal by a desperate Führer, stands in the basement command post of the Univermag department store, his uniform hanging loose on a gaunt frame. Soviet loudspeakers blare outside, surrender or die. Shells shake the walls, dust cascading from ceilings. His Sixth Army, once 300,000 strong, now reduced to starving remnants, ammunition expended, frostbite claiming more lives than bullets. You can almost taste the desperation in the stale air, hear the groans of wounded echoing in corridors. Paulus paces, aides silent. Hitler's radio message arrives. No surrender, fight to the last man. Promotion to field marshal, a none-too-subtle hint. No such rank has ever been captured. Paulus stares at the map, encircled since November. Airlift failed. 91,000 men left to capitulate. Surrender comes February 2nd. Red Army troops herd frozen Germans into columns, many collapsing in snow. Paulus taken to Moscow, interrogated. The disaster, 150,000 dead in the pocket. Rest prisoners, few return. In the Wolf's Lair, Hitler rages to staff. Paulus betrayed me, he should have shot himself. He blames generals, Luftwaffe. Goering's promise of 500 tons daily delivered barely 100. But the route, Hitler's no-retreat order. Manstein's relief effort halted on direct command. Stalingrad must be held at all costs for prestige. The error cascades. Army Group A in Caucasus retreats in panic, losing equipment. Soviets seize initiative. Kursk looms. Manpower irreplaceable. Elite divisions annihilated. Hitler doubles down, declares total war. Speer mobilizes economy too late. Wonders weapons, V-2, jets, divert resources from tanks, planes needed now. Ideology blinds, refuses armistice feelers, fights Jews and Bolsheviks to end. As prisoners march into Siberian captivity, one lieutenant whispers, "We lost the war here." Stalingrad becomes symbol, turning point where offensive spirit dies. But the final nails come in Normandy and Baghdad, where Hitler's obsessions scatter forces fatally. June 6, 1944. The storm-lashed beaches of Normandy, where the roar of Higgins boat ramps dropping mixes with the staccato of MG-42s sweeping the sand. Private Elias Graham, 116th Infantry Regiment, 29th Division, stumbles into knee-deep surf at Omaha Beach, salt spray stinging his eyes, the weight of his M1 Garand dragging him down. Bodies float nearby, blood tinting the waves crimson. Shell craters pock the dunes. German bunkers belch fire from concrete slits. Overhead, naval guns thunder. USS Texas and Arkansas pounding positions. But the Atlantic Wall holds, Rommel's obstacles claiming lives by the dozen. You can almost feel the shock of cold water, hear the screams of wounded as medics drag them to cover. Graham's platoon pushes up the shingle, using Bangalore torpedoes to blast wire, flamethrowers clearing pillboxes. This is D-Day, the invasion Hitler feared but dismissed as impossible across the Channel. In Berlin's depths, Hitler sleeps late at Berchtesgaden, aides hesitant to wake him with invasion reports. By noon, he rants, "A feint, the real blow comes at Pas de Calais." Obsessed with Fortress Europe, he hoards panzer divisions under Rommel's command, Panzer Group West, but refuses release without personal order. Rundstedt begs, "Give me the reserves." Denied. Days lost as Allies consolidate. The error, scattering forces across theaters. Divisions tied in Italy, Norway, Balkans, guarding against threats that never materialized. Atlantic Wall incomplete, resources squandered on V-weapons terrorizing London instead of defending beaches. Rommel, touring defenses months earlier, warned the first 24 hours will be decisive. Yet Hitler micromanages, fortifies wrong sectors, believes propaganda of invincibility. When reserves finally move, Allied air superiority shreds them on roads. By July, breakout at Saint-Lô. Falaise pocket encircles 50,000 Germans, annihilated. Paris liberated August. The Western Front collapses faster than 1940's conquest. Hitler retreats to bunkers, plotting fantasies, Ardennes offensive, wonder weapons. Assassination attempt July 20th, bomb plot, hardens paranoia, purges officers. Competent commanders replaced by loyalists. As Allies race to Rhine, Soviets launch Bagration, destroying Army Group Center, greater loss than Stalingrad. Two fronts bleed Germany white. The facade crumbles. One man's refusal to concentrate force, to negotiate, to adapt, dooms the Reich. But in the final bunker days, delusion persists to the bitter end.
April 30th, 1945. The Führer bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery in Berlin, where the air is thick with damp concrete, cigarette smoke, and the distant thunder of Soviet artillery shaking the ceiling like an earthquake. Adolf Hitler, hunched over a map table cluttered with empty pill bottles and half-eaten rations, stares at situation reports with bloodshot eyes. His hands tremble, Parkinson's or exhaustion, as aides Eva Braun, Goebbels, and Bormann hover in the flickering fluorescent light. Outside, Red Army shells crater the garden above, flames visible through ventilation shafts. You can almost smell the fear sweat in the confined space, hear the muffled cries from wounded in upper levels. Berlin encircled, streets an inferno of rubble and barricades manned by boys and old men. Hitler rants in a hoarse whisper, "Traitors everywhere! The wonder weapons will turn it yet!" He plots phantom armies, Wenck's 12th from the Elbe, Steiner's counterattack, non-existent relief forces. Reality intrudes hourly. Krebs reports Soviets in Potsdamer Platz, Tiergarten overrun. Hitler explodes at Goering's telegram seeking leadership, dismisses him, orders arrest. Himmler negotiating separately, branded traitor. The man who declared no surrender now faces it. In the map room, he marries Eva Braun in a brief ceremony, Goebbels witnessing. Then, alone with her, cyanide and pistol. Bodies burned in the garden shell crater, petrol fumes rising as guards salute ashes. Goebbels follows with family, poison, shooting. Bormann flees, fate unknown. The bunker empties, survivors surrendering to Soviets. Hitler's fatal error, not one decision, but a chain rooted in delusion. Invading Russia without winter prep or Allied peace. Declaring war on America. No retreat orders, bleeding armies, micromanaging generals, prioritizing ideology over strategy, exterminating millions while fronts collapsed. Post-war, Speer reflects, Hitler believed his will could defy mathematics, production, logistics, manpower. It couldn't. Eisenhower, he lost when he attacked the Soviet Union. The Reich crumbles in weeks. Unconditional surrender May 8th. Europe ravaged, 70 million dead. One man's hubris, racial hatred, refusal to adapt, costs Germany everything. The biggest fatal error? Underestimating humanity's resilience against tyranny and overestimating his own genius.